Okay, in the last video we talked about tags, and now we're going to talk about attributes. Attributes are things that sit inside of the tag and tell the browser what extra things to do with that specific tag. Now the way this is formatted, if you look over here, you've got your less than sign, you've got the name of your tag, but instead of putting a closing greater than sign right there, you put a space, and then you put the attribute. An attribute is styled in this way. You have the name of the attribute, an equal sign right after it, and then between quotation marks, you put the values or the information that go within that attribute. There are a few key ones to know about in terms of the things that might style or add value to the individual bit of content. The most common one is probably alt. Alt is for images, and it's a way to tell the browser what is in that image. That's useful if images don't load, but it's also useful for people with disabilities when they use a screen reader to view your page. It's a way for you to say, this image includes this information, so that they can get that information, even if they can't visually see the image. Another one is style. We'll talk about this more later, but this is where you can put styling information to change the look and feel or the size or whatever of a tag, of an area that a tag is outlining. There are other inline things like width or height that let you just show or add a very specific value or size or dimension to a tag. These typically aren't used very often, but they are used occasionally in HTML email, so you might see those there. But the two that are maybe the most important to understand fundamentally how they work are class and ID. Class is a way to link similar attributes together, similar elements together. It's a way to say, for example, if 10 different images are all logo images, you might put class equals logo. And what that would do is let you change the styling of all of those things by using a single line of code, which we'll talk about in the CSS portion in a few minutes. Now, IDs are something similar, but an ID is used to identify a very specific element. So you can see that up here I have ID equals main title and ID equals lesson title. These are the only times I'm going to put those IDs anywhere on the page. And this is useful for a few other things with languages like JavaScript, for example. But it's also useful for CSS. You can target the styling of those elements using CSS and change it without having to come in here and change code. So those are two things to keep in mind. In fact, let's just do a quick exercise of this. We're going to add an image. I'm going to copy the image address of this. We're going to add an image down here. Now, if you remember, images don't need a closing tag, so we'll do img. The attribute that we add for this now is an src. This is the URL of the image, equal sign, quotation mark. We'll paste that URL and then do a quotation mark. And then again, we just close the tag, and that's all we have to do because it doesn't require a closing tag. We'll refresh the output, and there is our image. Well, we want that to be a little bit smaller, so we'll do width equals 50 and height equals 50. And this is an image, so let's put an alt tag of Inntopia mark. Now, if the image didn't load or something happened, it would show Inntopia mark as the in this area right here. So, or if you used it with view this page with a screen reader, it would read Inntopia mark instead of the image. So again, the tag is image, but the attributes are src for the URL of the file, width for obviously width, and height for the same, and then alt to show alternative text for that image. So those are attributes. Again, the tag is the first set of characters where we've got our less than sign and the name. An attribute comes after a space with the attribute name equals, and then the information, the value between those quotation marks. The most common issue here is pretty simple. You forget the closing quotation mark. And if you do that, that's the one thing to think about and notice with attributes. That is going to trip you up more than anything. It's just forgetting that closing quotation mark, or putting maybe a single quotation instead, which will do the same thing. So make sure with those tags you have a space and you have both quotation marks, and you should be good to go.